Hey there, Fearless. Welcome. This is Matt the Clown. Welcome to another episode of Back to Basics. I recorded the video going briefly over highlighting, but I didn't really go super in depth with it, and I feel like it really didn't cover the subject too well, so I'm going to make another one, this one. In fact, I might just not upload the other one, so if the other one never appears, that's why. Because what I had done was I was highlighting this guy, which, you can see that there's some cool highlights going on in there, but I didn't go super in depth. I didn't highlight this guy all the way, and because of his uniform color, I didn't think it really gave the best example of what exactly I do when I highlight. So instead, I will be using this guy. This is a Dark Eldar Mandrake, I believe. I picked up a box of them just because they look cool. It was literally, that was the only decision. I don't really intend on playing Dark Eldar, and from what I've read, the Mandrakes aren't really that great. But they look really, really cool. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you how I plan on highlighting this model. So let me tell you what I've done so far. He's so dark right now, and I only have so much light, so bear with me. You can see that the skin is kind of purpley, the hair is sort of like a grimy white, the pants or skirt, or really whatever this is a sort of brown. The flames on his left hand are green, and of course the sickle is a muddy gray right now. What I've done is I assembled him, I put him on his base, I primed him, I primed him in white as opposed to black like I did in my priming video, and then I base coated him. What I did with his base coat, unlike what I did in my my base coating Back to Basics video, I base coated him in several different colors. I base coated the clothes in Mournfang brown, each of the skin bits in, I believe it was Lich purple, which is from the old line, so find your equivalents. I did the flames in Goblin green, also from the old line of paints. The sickle in Codex gray, or did I Codex gray? No, I couldn't find my Codex gray. So the sickle, I mixed my own gray, which is something anybody can do, no matter what line of paints you're using. And the hair I did in Deneb stone, which I'm sure by now you realize is from the old line. Then what I did, I went over the whole thing in a Devlin mud wash. Devlin mud is from the old line, but I know for a fact there's a mud wash right now. Because I figured, this guy's probably kind of grimy, probably kind of been dirtied up, so that's how I washed him. So that's what I've done so far. Now, the reason I elected to do different parts of him based in different colors is because he's not quite so uniform as a Space Marine is. Like the skin, the clothes, the flames on his hand, they're all going to be different colors in the end. And by basing different parts in different colors, it makes the base coat step take a couple extra minutes, but it saves you a couple of layers of paint, and on a detailed model, that's just the best way to do it, at least in my opinion. If you don't want to base in different colors, that's fine, but your mileage may vary. So I'm just going to go ahead, and I'm going to start by highlighting. I'm going to start with those flames. I'm kind of excited to do that. So, when you're highlighting, one thing you want to do, at least when you have a multi-tiered highlight like this, if you're doing a lot of flat surfaces, you don't necessarily need to do this, but I recommend it anyway. You want to take the area that you intend on bringing out of the shadows, intend on bringing out of the whole darkened wash, because the wash, it makes every color darker. You're going to want to actually take the paint that you used just beneath the wash, in the Flames case, Goblin Green, and just start your highlighting there. Start your highlighting with the color that you based in. Now, I didn't do that with my Sanguinary Guard, but that was for a very specific reason, involving Alabaster. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this brand new brush that I got, because I like you guys so much that I bought a whole new brush to make sure I was able to show you exactly how I highlight with no snags. I'm going to take this new brush, I'm going to wet it up, get it all ready, and sorry, brush was in my mouth. I'm going to take my Goblin Green. I always shake my paints before I use them. I don't know if it's necessary, but I do it. I'm going to take my Goblin Green, and I'm going to take some of it out the pot, put it over here on my makeshift palette. Now, because this is a small area, I don't need to take much out of the pot, and if I need to, I haven't mixed anything, so I can always very easily go back and get more. So, yeah. Now, the reason I'm sure I discussed this in my base coating and priming video, but the reason I wash before I highlight is because you need that sort of deeper, darker color to bring out your highlights, and by washing over your highlights, you bring the highlights down, and you kind of got to go back and do them again anyway. So, I'm going to lead in here. I really hope I'm not blocking all the light as I do this. I am. Give me a moment. I'm going to see if I can't readjust where my lighting sits, and I'll be back in just a minute. Now, I finished up the hair, and I haven't done anything in between the two videos, so I'm just going to go back to the skin now, and what I'm going to do, because I'm not really sure exactly how I want to handle this, I'm going to see what it looks like with a little bit of purple and white mixture now. Because the purple is still so dark, I don't want to go in just with a 50-50 mix. I'm going in with a little more purple in the mix than white. In fact, I need to crack my purple open again to add more purple to this bad boy. But yeah, you don't want your contrast between each layer of highlighting to be too high. You want your ultimate contrast to be high because that's going to stand out. But each layer shouldn't have too high of a contrast because it's going to stand out in the wrong way. It's just not going to look right. Because in real life, only things that are high gloss and metallic have have really high contrast between differing layers of highlight. I'm just going to go in on the face here. Start with this edge. It's possible I didn't put enough white into this. In fact, no, I definitely did not. I definitely took enough white out of it that it just went back to the original Lich Purple. Trial and error. That's part of the hobby. That's okay. Now, that ought to do it. There we go. That's much better. So yeah, just go lightly over faces, and it'll just pick up those highlights. I'm going to edge over the fingers like I did with the hair. Or I'll just go in with the tip very lightly like I did with the hair. You know, whatever works. It's your model. Go in how you like. I'm just going to go in all the places I highlighted before, I'm going to highlight again. Because there was so little contrast in that layer that I'm just kind of starting over with the highlights here. Typically, I would recommend that your second layer be smaller than your first, because that's typically how you do it. Each brighter layer needs to be smaller and smaller than the previous layer, because that's just how light works. If you look at anything that has a direct light source on it, the brighter part of it, the higher highlight of it, is smaller than the shadow of it. Or at least smaller than the non-highlight part. I'll come in here and get, I really hope you guys can see this, come in here and get the right pectoral and the left pectoral. Now the pecs and such on this guy are a little rough because of all the scarring that they put into the details. So you're not going to get a lot of musculature, at least not from me today. But musculature is something that you do need to be careful of when you're highlighting, because it's something that we see on a fairly regular basis, at least if you go to the movies. So it's one of those things that people are going to be able to look at and go, you didn't do that right. When I get around to painting my Sanguinor, I'll pop in with a better musculature highlighting video, because he's got some pretty clear abs and such. Yeah, just the balls of the shoulders, the biceps, but leave that shadow that's in there naturally, because that shadow exists in the real world. And you want it to look almost like this guy also exists in the real world. Back to his feet now. Oh yeah, you can really see that on the feet. Little toe. In fact, I probably went in there a little too hard on this foot, but that's okay. This foot will be a little bit better. Yeah, if you overload your brush, you're gonna get too much on there. But that can always be fixed by bringing it back down, or you can leave it if you like the way it looks when you overdo it. I sometimes do. Alright. So that's the second level of highlights, technically, though it really looks more like the first. Now, the final level, I was originally going to do like an ice blue kind of thing, but I think I'm just going to add more white to the purple and call it a day on the skin, because, well, it's easier. If you really want to get fancy with your highlights, you can always add other colors in, because, you know, blue is a part of purple, and it's the cooler, higher color of it, so if you want to throw some blues into your purples and whatnot, that's totally acceptable. But for me today, I'm just going to end the highlights for the skin in this nice little lavender color I've just mixed up. And we're going to start in here on the back. Now, I'm just going to do this, I'm going to wipe that a little bit. I'm just going to do this on like the very edges of each thing. Just a light touch on each of the highlights that I did before. It's actually almost too much, but almost is okay. You know, because I just want him to stand out a little bit with his muscles. Yeah, I definitely overdid it on the mix, but that's okay. Because you can always go in and smudge it around a bit with your finger. That's something I actually am a big proponent of. Going in with your thumb and forefinger and just smudging things around until they look the way you want them to. It's not a super professional technique, but it is a way to get your highlights to actually blend into one another a little bit better. Go in on the face. Now, you don't need to highlight every part of the face. In fact, in this case, since the direction of the light I'm taking is not coming from the left side, I'm not even going to heavily highlight the right side of the face. Well, my right, his left. Yeah, my gradient is not perfect on this, but it just wasn't showing up enough in the actual model for me to be happy with it. Now on the feet. And on the feet. Now your highlights, you need to get smaller and smaller with each level. So your final level of highlights is actually going to take the least amount of time overall for your highlighting process. So I'm actually almost done with this level of highlights because, well, it's the highest level. Now I'm just fixing up this bicep a little bit. I don't know if you can see what I've done, but he's already standing out a good bit more. Now, I could take it another step and just go in with like white on the really high parts, but I've already kind of made him a little brighter than I ever intended. So I'm gonna, ignore these bits, by the way, they're just for my sanguinary guard. So I'm gonna leave his skin as it is, and I'm going to move on to the sickle. Now, the sickle I'm going to be doing in, I could do it in varying shades of gray and try to get like a non-metallic metal look, because that's how you would do it. But instead of doing that, I'm going to experiment with a little bit of bolt gun metal and then mithril silver as my highlight. So I'm going to go in with the bolt gun. Just get a little bit of that on my palette. Bolt gun metal and mithril silver are from the old line of Citadel paints, but I guarantee you there are equivalents. I don't know what they are, but they're, you know, that list of, you know, paint equivalents is readily available somewhere on the internet, I'm sure. So, really what I'm going to do here now, I'm not going to get it everywhere, just the bolt gun is going to be a very general highlighting layer, so it's going to be almost everywhere. But it's not going to be on the little nooks and crannies. It's not going to be on the far side from the light, but it's going to be all up in the blade because it's a nice dark color and it's going to give it that sort of metal shine. And I had considered making it the base coat, I really had, because it's dark enough where it can't really be used too well as a highlight. I'm sorry, I'm very bad at recognizing where the camera is in relation to the model. So every so often I'll go off on the edge here, look down at the camera and go, oh, they can't see what I'm doing. But yeah, I'm just sort of adding to it. Now, I didn't get everywhere, and I gave it a very thin coating, just to give it that metal sheen, which also can help you figure out where your highlights are coming from if you're using a light source that is the same as your real-world light source. Now, yeah, so I could have done that as the base coat. I didn't, but it's perfectly acceptable to use a metal paint as your base coat and then bring that down with a wash. I'm almost tempted to go back in there with the Devlin Mud Wash over this, but I'm not gonna, because that's gonna take time, and, well, time is money, I suppose. So now I'm gonna go in there with a Mithril Silver, which is a much brighter metal color, and it's going to be, actually, you know, I might, yeah, I'm not gonna mix them up. You can mix them, but in this case, I'm not gonna bother, because metal has a higher contrast like that in real life, so that's just what I'm gonna do. So I'm gonna get right up in here on this high point of the sickle, and I'm not even gonna go all the way to the tip because that's just not where the light source goes. But I am gonna get the curvature of the sickle in this Mithril Silver. Yeah, that's nice. And then I'm going to go in, get some more water here. Now, Mithril Silver, at least for me, always dries real fast on the palette, so I gotta work a little more quickly. Go in there with this, because that's where the light's hitting. Same on the other side. And then on the butt there by the handle, just a swoop. And then on the outer part of this handle, just on the raised parts there. And for this sickle, I think, yeah, a little bit on the edges here. But I think now, with this sickle, we're done. Now, the sickle was fairly simple. Metals are actually surprisingly easy when you're actually using metallic paint and when you're trying to keep them dull. It's when you want them to be bright and flashing that they get a little bit more difficult. That'll be something that I'll go over more with you when I do my Sanguinor. Alright, now comes the final step, which is his pants. So, like I said, I based those pants in Mournfang Brown. So I'm going to go in there with the Mournfang. I'm going to bring that up a little bit. And then I'm probably going to go in there with a little bit of Balor Brown. And possibly follow that with one other level, I'm not sure. So, in I go with the Mournfang. So, yeah, it's just a matter of holding it properly. Here you go. Right here is where the light seems to be hitting the pants the brightest. So you get in there with the brush, a little bit with the tip. On flat surfaces like parts of these pants, the edge is nice, but if you can't get in there, just use the tip. Like right here on the pants is a nice flat surface that you can use the edge on. But always make sure that you're not getting into the darkest areas with the tip, because that's going to get rid of all your beautiful shadows, because you need those shadows for the highlights to really be a thing. I just moved my whole light source, and you can't see what I'm doing. Oh my goodness, I'm a hot mess today. Oh, and I go in here. Now, the highlights with the Mournfang aren't going to stand out too much, because I didn't do a very heavy coat of the wash, like I sometimes do. But it's important to go in there and get that equivalent going. Even if it's a quick, just initial highlight, like I did with the skin. Just get in there very lightly with the tip of the brush or the edge of the brush. The ropes here, just kind of edge over them. All the most raised bits, even if it's far from the light. It needs some level of highlights because there's light in the world. Unless you're going for a very high contrast lighting scheme, in which case have a blast with that, because those are a lot of fun to work with if you know what you're doing. If you don't know what you're doing, it's a nightmare. But I'm assuming anyone going for something like that has some clue what's going on with their highlights and their shadows. Whereas I right now have no idea what the hell I'm doing. Jesus. Get in here, and on the edges here, and on the butt, and on the waist. Now some of these areas really didn't seem to take the wash, so you can always go back with a smaller brush and a wash to get areas that should have gotten it but didn't for one reason or another. That's a totally acceptable technique and something that I will probably do with this model by the time I'm done painting it. If I continue to paint it after this video, which there's a good chance I will, because this guy's kind of cool looking. I like the way the sickle came out. So here we go. Alright, so that's the first level of highlights for the pants. It doesn't look very different. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to do something that's a little bit different than what I've been doing. Up until now I've been mixing colors to get my highlights. With the pants, I'm actually going to go in there with Balor Brown, which is a sort of more yellowy brown, but it's something that I like the way it behaves with Mournfang. It'll get a certain feel to it that I like. So you'll see where I go with it. I'm probably not going to highlight much past the Balor Brown. Maybe a little on the edges. I don't know yet. But what you need to remember is that your higher highlights need to be smaller than your darker highlights. Because that's just how light works. If there's one thing you take away from this video, I hope it's that. Because that is the part of highlighting that is the hardest to get a handle of, is making your brighter highlights smaller than your darker highlights. Which sounds like a weird phrase, but it's true. Smaller areas for your brighter colors. It's just the way it needs to go. Now for this, I'm kind of making it a fairly large area, simply because the Mornfang was such a subtle highlight that I'm not in love with it. And I'm going for a certain look. So that is way too much, so smudge that. And yeah, I suppose that's alright. Nope. Wipe more paint off this brush, that's part of the problem. Now, getting your gradients, it's going to take time. It takes me time. It should take multiple layers to get a good gradient going. So what I've done here is actually not good, but the best way to get a solid gradient is to do several thin layers of a certain highlight, and then over those layers get smaller and smaller, if that makes any sense. I'm going to go back over here. Just get the edges. Because if all else fails, edge highlights are really nice looking and easy to do. You literally just get the edges of the highest points. Even if they stand out a little bit more, they're a very popular option. They're not necessarily photorealistic, but they look nice. And you don't need to pick a source of direction for your edge highlights, or a light source rather for your edge highlights, because it's just the very highest points that are getting highlighted. At which point, you know, you don't necessarily need to worry about light, because theoretically, the highest points of any individual object are going to be picking up more light. So it looks good enough with just your edges highlighted, but sometimes you want to do a little bit more than that. People are bothering me on the internet, but I will look at them when it is their turn. This video is almost 20 minutes long already, but we're almost done here, I swear. I swear. We're almost done. Because the next step isn't something I necessarily need to show you, but I can just talk about it briefly. Now, the reason I'm not super concerned for the way the highlights are going in these pants, I know it's more of a skirt, but I'm just going to keep calling it pants, is because I kind of want them to look grody and dirty. But if you don't want your things to be grodier and dirtier, well, you're going to have to work with a cleaner highlight scheme, which is fine, you know. And if you have any questions, you can get in touch with us here at Fearless Games. You can get in touch with me directly via the Facebook or the YouTube. The easiest way to get in touch with me or the vet specifically is to use our Facebook. He and I are pretty constantly using that, and we'll get back to you pretty quickly because we like being able to help you guys out with things or give you advice or answer any questions you might have about the hobby, because we don't have much lives of our own. Your highlighting layers should always be thinner at first and just, you know, more and more. That's why I'm kind of going over this, because I'm going a very thin layer and just kind of covering everything very, very lightly with this color, making him look really kind of gross, like maybe he pooed himself. No, I didn't do that, but I considered it. I did consider a little bit of poo pants. I know a guy who always paints a little bit of brown on the pants of his zombies, because he's kind of gross, but he's a good guy. I like that guy. I haven't seen him in a while. Alright, so hopefully you can see sort of what I've done there. Now what I would do from here on these pants, and I'm not going to do it in this video because it's already 23 minutes long, is I would then go back to the edges again, pick the highest points of those edges, like on the knees and on you know, the really, like, you know, the spots that have the really deep folds, like on the back, and I'd go to those edges there, and I'd hit the highest points of those with a little bit of Ushabti bone, or even a little bit of white at this point. But for now, I'm going to call this a wrap, because I think I've given you a better idea of what to do with your highlights than before. If not, feel free to get in touch with me, and I'll see what I can do about describing it in better detail. I might do an updated version of this video with a better camera and another one of the Mandrakes, or a different model if you guys want. But in the meantime, leave us a like. I'm just going to try and zoom in on this bad boy real quick. Leave us a like, subscribe. You know, comments are always appreciated. And, you know, until next time, guys, take care.